Already taking a big shift away from what they've done today, where there's no Sylas, there's no Braum being taken off the board yet for us.
I'm curious if with a Vayne ban, this puts priority on Draven to go up. I really like Vayne into Draven because she can push him out of his axis. When he goes to pick him up, you just condemn him
If I'm
away.
the Draven, I really like playing into a Vayne because I'm like...
You would think, yeah. But the last time it happened, Rekkles went for the Vayne into the matchup. And yeah, he did get ganked level 2, but it's just kind of a fun interaction.
That's very, very true. Now, the Sylas ban will come through from the side of Splyce. And I think what this says is that Splyce don't like prioritizing or valuing the Sylas. And on a blue side, that's very surprising because he should be, right now on the current patch, like the first pick, the highest priority in the current meta.
Yeah, Sylas is very rarely banned on blue side. In fact, before this matchup of our 2 previous best of 5s, he was only banned once on blue side. He's almost a perma-ban red side, so that actually puts huge concerns for me. If Splyce are banning it from blue side, can they not play it?
Well, that's a question we'll find out as the series plays out. A number of high-priority picks open and available. The likes of Hecarim, Morgana, Kayle is up. And I think Fnatic banned the Bwipo, sorry, the Jace, because of Bwipo performance of the last game. It is a Braum lock-in here for Norskeren, and now Fnatic will have a couple seconds to respond. Last weekend, Nemesis got a pentakill on the Kayle, and it is locked in once again.
And Vedi, I know that you feel very strongly about what the decision is to blind pick Kayle.
Yeah, because I think Kayle does have answers, and so Ender talked about it earlier in the day. The thing about blind picking her is it's once she gets to a level point, she's very strong. However, you can pick champions that can like dive her, gank her, match up very well into her. Hecarim top is, I know, a champion that just naturally does very, very well into her. But obviously she gets to a late, in pro play, teams aren't always that aggressive. Teams don't always find those leads. They don't always snowball as effectively, which means that Fnatic must have a lot of confidence if they're going to draft this. And you'll notice that they've actually paired it with the Rek'Sai, which is exactly what they did against Vitality in their Game 3 last time.
And it can offer a really nice bridging point because Rek'Sai is strong in early game and mid game to help Kayle kind of like ease off that she doesn't have to be the big carry point to that game and then take over late. And what it does is it forces Splyce to respond by having late game insurance that allows them to pick up things like the Tristana, which isn't just a comfort pick for Kobbe, but now it's like, okay, you got the big scary AoE crit machine, possibly, depending on how he builds. We also have one too.
Yeah, and of course you talked a lot about how CC can counter Kayle. With a Braum as well as a Skarner, there's a whole lot of CC tools that can try to control their champion. Xerxe has played Skarner once this split. It was a victory. He went 0, 2, and 13. And as we enter phase 2, you can see that Sivir was secured by Rekkles. It was just a Sivir comp in game 1 that helped Fnatic pick up the win. And in round 2, Corki finds himself banned already.
And these are going to be free Sivir pickup pretty much every single time for Rekkles because it's a priority pick of a Braum. It was an Alistar ban, or an Alistar given away for free because it was a Kench pick in game number 1. And Alistar is really the support that terrifies Sivir because of his interaction with her spell shield. If Splyce want to try to avoid the Sivir without banning it, they need to put higher priority on a different support champion to deny it from Rekkles.
Ooh, I like the Kennen ban. With so many top laners already taken off the board, Kennen kind of rises in priority. What does surprise me is over in other regions, champions like Vladimir are insanely high in terms of the priority list, and I wonder if Splyce will look in that direction. They could then maybe consider a melee, an AD champion in the mid lane, but it's always a bit of a gamble taking an AD champion into Kayle, largely because they're often melee, and they can be target ganks by things like the Rek'Sai, just as we saw last week when Fnatic played up against a Yasuo in the mid lane.
All right, I'm seeing the hover. I don't want to get too excited yet. That's why never talk about hovers. The last second pivot is the Thresh, which is a champion we talked a lot about in game 1 once the support pool was more heavily pinched.
I'm still very excited by a Thresh, especially on Hylissang's Thresh. Now, the cool thing about Thresh Sivir, especially if this Kayle gets going and the ability to play a side lane, is that when you park the Sivir in a mid lane just to kind of hoover up all of that farm, one of the problems is that Sivir doesn't have things like an Ezreal and a Tristana and a Lucian, you know, that safety mechanism to dash away. So she needs extra things like a Lantern to safely push up and have more map pressure and map control. Did
they just pick Sion?
They did, followed by Ryze. Explain the confusion.
So the reason why I'm confused is because now if I'm Fnatic, I immediately put Kayle into that Sion lane. And I'm like, this is the freest lane I've ever had. You might be able to push me underneath my tower, but you're never going to kill me. You're never going to dive me. I'm at no risk right now. And I just feel like it's a super safe lane to give Kayle all this free scaling.
Unless it's mind games and it's Ryze top and Sion mid.
Well, we're going to find out in a few seconds. How do Fnatic respond? Because in order to agree to that duel, you have to do the pivot. They're instead going going to lock in the Cho'Gath. And that is a very different style of team composition that I'm used to seeing on this patch.
So what this is saying is that Nemesis is the confident Kayle player. They want to keep the jungle mid synergy of the Rek'Sai and the Kayle together. I wouldn't be surprised to see Broxah invest time there, just like he did last week. And I think that it can help Kayle get through what is often a rough laning phase. Notice as well that they picked an AP top champion. That's typically because Nemesis will go towards the AD build with things like the Blade of the Ruin King, Rage Blade, and maybe Trinity Force as well. So having the Cho'Gath there, adding that extra bit of AP damage, will round out this composition for Fnatic, which, once again, very team fight based. A little bit harder to execute than what we saw before, but still, press R button, press all your damage buttons, and you'll likely just clean through the enemy comp.
Yeah, and I also feel like it's a reaction to the fact that you saw that Splyce was setting up a front-to-back team. You already saw that the Tristana came through. They needed to go for the blind pick. They decided to go for the Ryze and the Sion there. Maybe some flex opportunity, but you assume it's Sion into the top lane. So they've got their big, meaty front line. And so Fnatic are just saying, okay, we'll also grab a tank and we'll meet you in the front to back, but we also have a Kayle on top of that.
Yeah, and Frosk, is it fair to say that Splyce did go back to a slightly more trusted style of play? It was one of the big discussions we had from the draft in Game 1 and then seeing how they played out.
Yes, this does scream kind of old school Splyce to me, the fact that maybe they lost confidence in some of the experimentation that they were doing in Game 1, and so for Game 2, it's kind of back to basics. Let's see if we can out-team fight Fnatic. You start hitting that emergency button if this doesn't work out for them.
Well, there is an entire game for Splyce to prove they can challenge Fnatic and take them down. It was a very, very close game to open up the series, and Splyce need to bounce back. They find themselves down 0-1. And if you would like to watch the game from Broxah's POV, go check out twitch.tv/RiotGames2.
Now, there are some very small, quick things I want to draw viewers' attentions to very early on into this game. Hylissang is a player I want the viewers at home to keep an eye on. Something that you'll likely see him do is roam around the map and group up with Broxah a decent amount. This duo can be very devastating because of the amount of pick potential and synergy they have. A hook lands, guaranteed knockup. A knockup lands, guaranteed hook, which means that it's very easy to set up plays with either of these teams. The other thing I want viewers to keep an eye on is Xerxe once he hits that level 6 mark, where he will look to attack. The thing about Sivir is it's very difficult to spell shield that ultimate, and it's a very easy point of attack, but obviously it's Rekkles' Sivir, and he is not a guy that is likely to go down to a single Skarner game.
It's also the death sentence in that lane. You know, if Hilly's ever paying attention that, hey, there's a possibility that Skarner's playing bot side, he's just going to back up, allow the Dark Passage to get Sivir to safety when, you know, Skarner comes wiggling out, predatored up, and running towards that that Sivir. I feel like it would be easy for the mid lane to execute. The fact that you have the targetable CC and the Skarner Ryze combo.
If anybody was watching during Game 1, we talked about how Youngbuck said they were going to talk about early game. There are some shenanigans here as Splyce have gone for a lane swap. Rocket jump forward. That's going to be a 2-man knocker for Bwipo. He's still holding on to the flash. Stun from the Braum passive. Flashes over the wall. I don't know if that was worth it.
So they've done a lane swap. We haven't seen this for quite a while, Frosk, and I'm a little surprised. Now, I'm trying to remember all of my turret knowledge, and I'm trying to remember if the bot tower is still weaker than the top one right now, because with the plate changes, I feel like that they actually equalized them out.
But I don't know if it was necessarily about kind of the long-term effects of a lane swap. We'll be able to tell later on as kind of like the waves get set, and maybe on the first reset of people going back to their lane if they swap back. If you see them swap back, then it tells me that it was actually about the level 1 of trying to make that Tristana-Braum combo work because of trying to proc the Winter's Bite.
Now, how painful is it that there was no kill secured, albeit they got the flash onto Bwipo? We can see a lot of pressure being put on this bottom lane. Rekkles already able to pick up the first turret plate as Hilly takes tower shot to the face. While that was going on, Nemesis shoved into the middle lane, and no flash on this Cho'Gath. Xerxe's coming for again.
Really going to try this? Level 2 Skarner.
Did he take his W and his Q on Bwipo?
We're going to find out in just a moment. Bwipo's starting to back away. He's in a 3 versus 1. The tower's coming to help out. Rupture will tag up Norskeren. Norskeren survives with less than 100 hit points. That is Splyce committing to this lane swap and dive.
Wow, so they actually make that first blood happen, and Vizicsacsi is just sitting here holding in the 1 versus 2. Now, I did have it confirmed that both towers now have exactly the same stats. With the turret plate introduction, those got equalized, so in the past, one of the risks that you used to run with trying to go for this lane swap is you just lose your bot tower much faster than top, which means enemy team gets gold advantage and then they can swap to top side. But by doing this, you can just play for plates and you can just avoid those sometimes difficult 2v2s or 1 versus 1s.
And this could just be that then Splyce said, okay, if we're going to play a traditional old school lane swap, that we have the superior ability to dive between the Skarner, the Tristana, and the Braum versus something like the Rek'Sai, Sivir, and Thresh. And so far, it's worked out for them.
Yeah, take a look at this. Xerxe's invaded and stolen that red buff from Broxah. Humanoid shoving in the mid lane, as well as the Splyce duo shoving the top lane. This Xerxe versus Broxah matchup is going to get interesting. Chachi's burning down from the Ignite. Rekkles is waiting for the shield to pop. Going to decide to just focus the tower and the plates first.
And you know, the more that I think about it, in terms of diving, because it is a Sion and a Cho'Gath, it's actually very scary to dive the Sion because of how much damage he'll do when he gets resurrected and just starts slapping people. So the opportunity for Chachi to actually trade back if an attempted dive did come from Fnatic in a lane swap is astronomical, much higher than an early game Cho'Gath.
So while I 100% agree, in terms of diving and setting up these kind of plays, being able to survive these situations is very important. But ultimately what you're playing for is plates.
Yes.
That is the priority. And if we look across the board, there are 2 plates or 3 plates have been taken in favor of Fnatic, whereas towards the top side, they managed to get none. They didn't take a single plate away from Bwipo. So while they were able to get a kill, the gold advantage ultimately goes towards the bot side of the map. As I say that, of course, he secured first blood as well. So that will mitigate that slightly.
Yes.
But, okay, maybe it's not as big of a deal as I thought it was. I should have checked the goal before I made that point.
I mean, that said, they immediately pulled the TP and they're like, okay, get out of it, reset the lanes, let's put it exactly back how it was because we're losing this one.
Okay, take a look. So even on gold as far as the teams are concerned. Obviously, first blood picked up by Splyce. While Bwipo was able to secure a little more CS, we saw how much pressure Rekkles and Hylissang were putting on a Vizicsacsi. First buys, Kobbe's got himself that BF sword versus the pickaxe and the long sword for Rekkles, and now we've reset the game, gone back to that traditional style, but it was Xerxe and Splyce that made the call, got the kill, and they started the momentum rolling.
And one of the big factors of why we are eventually going to swap back is because it is an Infernal. You have to think maybe if this was an air, if this was an ocean, Splyce would have continued to try their luck maybe at the top lane. Maybe they swap back because they were losing the plate race. I don't know. I think this is super interesting. I hope we continue to see it in this best of 5. But so far, kind of a big, huh? Did it work?
I'm really looking forward to trying to Splyce after this game, getting the logic behind it. Ultimately, they did come out ahead. The fact that they are an item up on the bot lane, but there's no flash on Norskeren, as Xerxe is here.
All right, Broxah is coming in as well. He's going to tunnel over the wall. Kobbe goes forward. He's already got a kill, got a reset. Jumped on Broxah's head. That's a double kill for Kobbe. He's 3-0. And the reset to bottom lane helps Splyce get further ahead.
So, lane swap, worth 100%. That BF source coming up clutch in the 2 versus 2, arguably 2 versus 3 that Splyce found themselves in. The Tristana Braum is surprisingly strong this early on into the game, and Fnatic thought that with the power of Rek'Sai they would be able to come out on top, but they end up falling short.
I mean, we say surprisingly strong, but of all people, Rekkles and Hilly should actually really know the strength of that lane. Tristana does so much damage when she lands on top of you, as well as the satchel. In tandem with Braum, just kind of that like fade-away damage when Winter's Bite procs, when the satchel procs, it's just so huge.
1,500 gold up, Infernal Drake secured, and 3 kills in Kobbe, the all-pro ADC. He's managed to steal away the signature pick of Rekkles, and he's showing up here in the second game, got a small CS advantage, and while that tower has taken a lot of damage, Splyce have got off to a very good starting game too.
So the other thing that happened while we were talking all about the side lanes was that Nemesis had to deal 1v1 with the Ryze. Now, if we think back to last week when Nemesis played up against Jizuke's Yasuo, one of the things that happened very early in that laning phase was a quick gank from Broxah to get some gold into Nemesis' back pocket, force a flash out from Yasuo, and he can't pressure as aggressively as he wants. Whereas because Broxah has been forced around the map trying to help all these lanes with the lane swap and the crazy shenanigans, Humanoid has just been pressuring and pressuring and pressuring, and Nemesis is forced under his tower. Those plates have slowly started to chip away, and Humanoid has built up a very healthy lead on this Ryze.
While he does have a healthy lead, it was also the fact that Nemesis did get that farm kind of funneled into him. And if Nemesis is saying, I'm going to go down anyway in this matchup, I'm just going to try to survive it, one of the key points when lane swaps were all the rage was the fact that it did actually isolate the mid lane, because your junglers are constantly skirting, playing around the side lanes, looking for those dives, protecting the lane that is forcing down the towers and the sides. It means that the mid lane gets to do whatever it wants. So if they don't end this game quickly, in the long run, that might actually help Fnatic because Kayle wasn't punished in levels 1 through 6.
Yeah, and one of the things about this AD Kayle build is that it doesn't really ramp up until you get the level 11 mark, and you also have the Blade of the Ruin King and Rage Blade, and sometimes Trinity Force equivalent depending on what your preference is as the Kayle player. So there's actually a fair amount of time for the side of Splyce, and the fact that they built up this very strong lead on Kobbe, we just need to now see Splyce start to reinforce that, play more through that, try and secure that bot tower, and move this Tristana around the map.
Well, you can see Berserker's Greaves as well as those double attack speed dangers. Xerxe is going to step over the Scuttle Crab. He's spotted out by Fnatic. You can see the pings on the mini-map. And I think wisely, Rekkles and Hilly, they backed away. Initially, Hilly was much deeper in that lane and instantly started to back off the moment Norskeren and Kobbe stepped forward. And take a look at that. That's at least another plate in reply at 9 minutes. Splyce extending this lead further.
This is something small, but I do want viewers to kind of watch out for it. Normally, in situations like that, Broxah continuously will put himself at a disadvantage to help his lanes. But that was actually Hilly and Rekkles putting themselves at a disadvantage to allow Broxah to clear his camps on the top side. This is pretty normal, standard jungle pathing, but if you go back and watch the VODs on Fnatic, so many times Broxah will have a full jungle on one side of his map, forego that to try to dig his laners out of it. But this is now kind of twisting the tables on their head and giving Broxah more power back.
All right, so let's see what Broxah can do with it. 0-1-0 on that Rek'Sai. Hasn't been able to find a lane to gank because it hasn't been going long enough in the standard situation. We saw Bwipo and Vizicsacsi trading a lot of damage back and forth. And every time we look back in this mid lane, Nemesis is falling just a little further behind. He clawed back, what was a 15 CS deficit to about 8. Now it's extended back to 11. And every time Humanoid is just shoving forward and really using Ryze's kit to his advantage, Nemesis is on one of those champions that needs items, needs time. And at 10 minutes, the team's behind.
And there are two primary builds. I'm trying to find a window to do this as I see multiple pings. I'm like, please don't die, Fnatic, right now. There's two primary builds for Kayle right now that's happening in professional play. There's the LCK one, and then there's the one that Nemesis ran last time, which is the Blade of the Ruin King into the Rage Blade. And the thing about that is it spikes a lot earlier. It's a 2-item power spike. It has a much smoother build transition path, and you get to be more effective earlier on. But we'll hold it, because now they're diving.
All right, they are indeed. Realm from Humanoid. Rekkles is going to get Chilling Smited down. The Impale not used just yet. Hilly's in trouble under the tower. Rekkles killed by Humanoid, and he's going to get stunned up as Chachi tanks everything. 2 kills, a tower, and Splyce are here to play.
And I absolutely love this play from Splyce. We were just talking about how they need to play through the Tristana lane. They need to get this tower down and start moving the gold around the map. And how do they do that? They send all 5 members there. They spend a teleport, they spend ultimates, they get a double kill. Everything's set up beautifully to enable Kobbe to carry.
Oh, maybe a little bit more, though. Bwipo could be in trouble. The thing that's saving him right now is they don't have information about where Broxah is, and that's why Kobbe is not chasing deep into Fog of War there. But this is control over the mountain if they want it. They're trying to send their bot lane up top so they can quickly contest a possible Herald trade. This is Splyce trying to eat up all of the map.
I love this play right now from Fnatic as an answer. 3 members lying in wait. They know that there's no vision in the river, but Kobbe's showing respect. And now look at the rest of Splyce. They're making their way up towards the top side. They want this Herald, and they want Broxah dead.
All right, Norskeren's found Broxah. Here comes Kobbe. The Lantern's in place. Hylissang's Thresh doing work. 3,000 gold up, but Splyce will be very, very happy to pick up the Rift Herald. There's still 2 minutes to make use of that charge to unlock even more turret plates, but it is once again at the cost of farm and gold to a Fnatic Sivir. He's going to get that plate and potentially the tower as the next minion wave makes its way down.
But let's not forget that a Rekkles classic is that while he is very good in lane, he's very good at surviving, farming, and getting resources into himself, when the team is at a deficit, that's often what he defaults to. He often isolates himself. He often focuses on getting as many resources so that he can be more valuable in the late game. And Splyce, with this knowledge, are just keeping the pressure up. They're trading towers across the board. They're not slowing down. They're looking for picks, and they're trying to keep this momentum going.
And it's making this late game Tristana so far ahead of the clock. The fact that she already has access to her Infinity Edge, that she's getting all of this gold off of the towers available to them. She can start grouping up with that Herald if she truly wants to. Like, Kobbe is a massive problem. So any 5v5 that Fnatic look for, Splyce just win it.
Look at this map. Splyce are just running circles around Fnatic, putting pressure in the mid lane, forces Fnatic's hand. They back away. Yes, Mountain Drake was secured, but Splyce are not done. They're going to put pressure with the help of Herald, take down the top inner turret, as well as some damage in middle. Rekkles forced to flash over the wall. Humanoid and Chachi, they're trying to shut him down. 3 towers to 1. 4,000 gold up, and Splyce on a roll.
What's important to note is now Rekkles hasn't had an opportunity to base. Broxah, his base was also interrupted. And Splyce, they're all full health, they're primed and ready to fight. Bwipo is stuck top lane catching that wave, and the only thing right now buying Fnatic time is that there is a wave only just now crashing onto this tower, but that could have been devastating for Fnatic if Splyce were able to turn that collapse into a dive and another tier 1 tower.
And once again, I'm impressed with Xerxe's impact in the early game. He's one of the guys we've talked a lot about. He's one of the guys we were looking at to be a standout member of the Splyce organization. In his Rek'Sai in the previous game, helped get Chachi ahead. And his Skarner this time, 0-0-3, leading the way on both the tower dives and the tower pressure.
I'm just super impressed with the kind of set playbook of Splyce. When they know kind of exactly what the steps are, they don't have to interact with Fnatic at all. They just ate up the map, have a huge lead for themselves. It's now 2 items on the Tristana. So they're super confident that, okay, Fnatic are now the ones that have to avoid us. And if we ever group up and try to force something with our pressure, we will always win. So this is Splyce having the confidence, having the momentum, and I want to see what they do with the driver's seat now.
Yeah. Really impressed with how Splyce are playing this, and you can already see a bit of a 1-3-1 starting to be set up, and things looking pretty good right now for Splyce.
Yeah, definitely the case. You can see some of the itemization as soon as we come out of this plate graphic. 12 secured by Splyce. That's an additional 500 gold just from those objectives. Kobbe cannot be stopped yet. Nemesis trying to clear the wave as best as he can, but he's had to invest in the Quicksilver Sash. So Blade of the Ruined King into QSS early already. And Splyce are in a great position. 3 towers to 1. Xerxe is pushing the vision deeper. If you look at the minimap, lots of deep wards and setting themselves up well.
And if you're a Fnatic fan right now, you just need the team to try to slow down Splyce. They can't take fights, so they want to avoid them and clear out waves safely and try to secure defensive vision of their jungle to safely get to these lanes to farm.
So, while Splyce are currently sitting with an advantage, I wanted to kind of jump into the next few steps for Splyce. So we can just keep let things run right now. We can see as Splyce look to try and engage, which we have to turn back because there's a fight happening.
Every time we try to use the new tool, unfortunately action happens. Thank you, observers, for jumping out. Kobbe gets yet another kill, and they're going to back away. Now the pressure is on Nemesis. He's going to be surrounded. Xerxe's got an Impale available, a flash if he needs it as well. Nemesis will get caught up, locked up, will buy some time as the Impale drags him around, but CC and Kayle, that's how you stop it.
The frustrating part here is Splyce do exactly what I was about to tell them to do, QuickShot. They found a pick in mid, they isolate the side lane and find another pick there, and now they can just keep the pressure up. 7-0 in kills right now. A massive gold lead, Splyce looking very clean.
And what I love is with the members that managed to snowball Splyce head. The fact that it was Humanoid and it was Norskeren's Braum finding the picks there. These less experienced members, you know, when we talked about Splyce's kind of iffy mid game, a lot of time when you put the magnifying glass on mid and support, it was these two that kind of wandered around the map, that didn't exactly know where they needed to be, that weren't able to commit for their team. Now it's these two who are helping lead the charge, who are setting up a lot of these plays for the team.
And it was simply a matter of Hylissang overextending in that situation. You got to remember that Splyce have all 3 lanes pushed up right now. And that means that if you go past any kind of point where there's no vision, it's very easy for the rest of the team to collapse. Now what you'll notice in this 1v1 is the great thing about Ryze into it is with the phase rush, he can actually outrun the Kayle. And that means that he can just buy time, wait for his jungler to arrive. The Impale actually just is CC long enough for the duration of Kayle's ultimate, which means that Splyce find a very easy kill, and now they're looking for another one.
Nemesis running, forced to flash, did not use it in the previous exchange. Reminder, still sitting only on the QSS and Blade of the Ruined King. This is Fnatic's vision, as you can see on screen. They are way behind. Take a look at the gold values that Splyce have accrued. Their top 2 members significantly further ahead than Fnatic, and that is why they've got this 5,000 gold lead, and they're continuing to pressure multiple lanes at the same time.
Kobbe close to over 9,000 gold right now, looking extremely strong. The primary carry of the team, 2.5 items, and once again, notice how Splyce are trying to split up the map. They're playing this 1-3-1 rather than just straight up team fighting Fnatic. They're not giving them that opportunity to come back into the game.
People will be saying that Kobbe is a super carry at 5-0. Got himself that Zeal. Another tower is just about to fall. Just not enough hits yet. yet. And Splyce now with this gigantic lead are going to have a much simpler time playing the mid game because they have such an increased margin for error. They can pick any fights they want, and especially with Humanoid being so confident going into Nemesis' Kayle.
And Fnatic can't catch a break. This is a, what, double Infernal? No, double Infernal and Mountain spawn. So the first 3 dragons are incredibly valuable. Splyce have complete control of the map. You can see that Skarner's picking it up for free right now. It is devastating. Even if Fnatic do manage to survive this stall out and put themselves at least on even footing chance, you're now fighting uphill at double Infernal. This is disaster.
I agree, Ross. I agree.
It hurts.
But it's one of those things as well what we said at the beginning of the game where we kind of wanted to challenge expectations of the fans because many perceive this to be a heavy favorite series for Fnatic. And the thing you always have to remember about Splyce is that they're not a bad team. They finished 4th during the regular season. They do have their strengths in their ability to team fight, and they do have strong carries as well. It was just a matter of, could they have the same early game as Fnatic? Could they match them in that? And the question mark ultimately fell down onto Xerxe, but in this game, while Xerxe was impactful, it was actually the unique strategy that Splyce brought to the table with their lane swap, the early BF sword for Kobbe, the quick turnaround gank that they got towards bot side, and the fact that they have not relented control so far.
And I think it's important to note that Splyce worked on some of the weaknesses they demonstrated during the regular season and demonstrated those improvements against SK Gaming, specifically talking around their mid game. And they've continued to improve as now Nemesis is going to get jumped on. And it's going to get stunned up as well. The Impale can be used in just a moment or two. Nemesis is simply not strong enough to be in that position. Doesn't have the support. Splyce, 8 kills to 0.
And I feel like it's a bit of a name issue here, and that when you look at this Splyce roster, like, you know what the ceiling is of Fnatic. Maybe there's some questions around Nemesis, but you know what to expect from this squad when they're in form.
Ooh, Humanoid this time around gets caught up. I think that was a death sentence.
But the likes of Norskeren, Humanoid, even Chachi and Xerxe to a lesser extent, like, we don't know what this iteration of Splyce looks like. This could be stronger than their 2016 form. This is just spring, you know, who knows what they'll look like for summer. And I think that's where a lot of this kind of lopsided perception goes in, because I look at the community's comments and a lot of people are saying, yeah, but pound for pound talent, Fnatic are just better. Do we really know that about Humanoid and Nemesis in top tier form?
Well, he's 2v1, we're about to find out.
I'm going to say no in 2v1.
Don't win that fight, but I will say, I am very excited.
Complimenting him and he gets feasted.
I am very excited to see both Humanoid stepping up as well as Nemesis. Nemesis last weekend played better than I was anticipating for his first playoff series, and Humanoid on this Ryze, yes, he had a favorable matchup early, but he's been pushing the boundaries on this champion. And obviously you can hear the fans here in Berlin cheering as Fnatic picked up their first kill. It will be at the expense of yet another one. Splyce fans erupt actually to shut down the Fnatic fans. 9 kills to 1, 6,000 gold up. And Splyce are using the Fnatic Death Bush against Fnatic.
So,
decimating smash, decimating smash! No! Broxah knew it was coming, but Nemesis did not. He manages to escape this time around. There wasn't a huge amount of follow-up damage while the rest of Splyce are on Baron.
beautiful stuff from Splyce. Their vision setup in the enemy jungle was perfect. Bwipo has flash, he has no feast. He's going to get ultied away, which means that this will be an easy Baron for Splyce and maybe more kills.
All right, very good rupture. We'll buy some time for Bwipo. Impale is just about available. Couple seconds to go. Bwipo's turning it back around to the Feral Scream and another fantastic rupture. Kayle ulti comes down by some seconds. Take a look at that. Delivers the chop to Kobbe, but the damage needs to follow back up. That's 1 for Fnatic. That's 2. That's a death sentence going awry. Now Humanoid's running for his life. Splyce slightly overconfident, just over Chase, and Fnatic find themselves a way back in.
It was going so well for Splyce. Disaster. Walked into a choke point and excellently used Kayle ultimate in a disastrous target selection of grabbing the Cho'Gath.
Ooh.
Oh no!
You hate to see it from Splyce. The crucial mistake that gives Nemesis 2 kills and a small window for Fnatic back into this game.
Now, of course, this replay brought to you by Alienware will show the mistake, but reminder, Splyce got the Baron and are still 5k gold up.
I feel like the pivotal moment here was the fact that they committed hard on the Cho'Gath, and the Kayle ultimate absorbed a lot of the damage when Xerxe initially pulls him into the fight.
Also, keep your eyes on the positioning of Rekkles right now. Untouched, untouched. He has no mana, but then he's going to get a lot of damage combined with the Kayle ult, combined with the fact that Nemesis is slowly stacking up his passive. And the moment it is primed and ready, along with a really good last-minute rupture, that's when this duo starts to melt through the team. And remember we said earlier on, you want to be really careful about grouping up against Fnatic because that is the one way they get back into the game. One good team fight with a Sivir Kayle can flip this game on its head, and that was a big shutdown that Fnatic have now brought into their back pocket, and Rage Blade is now finished for Nemesis.
I was just going to say, and that was before the Rage Blade was completed. Now that Kayle has this unlocked, it is terrifying when she gets those big stacks and just starts swinging through Splyce.
I'm still in the Splyce hype, though. 6,000 gold up, 11 kills to 4, 5 towers to 2. Yes, Fnatic have the tools, but they are still very far behind, and they cannot afford any mistakes getting caught out as the next few minutes plays out for us.
It's just one of those unfair things where you see the nameplates and there's just that tiny voice in the back of your head that says, oh yeah, but it's Fnatic. And when you see Splyce walk into a choke point and just get lit up, you're like, no, please, it was so perfect, you can do it.
So the funniest thing about this to me, slightly tangent, is that when Kobbe jumped into mid and forced a flash out from Rekkles, he did a very short but sweet laugh spam, right? He's a 6-0 Tristana at this point, by the way, so to laugh in the face of Sivir at that point. But then the fact that Fnatic then immediately win a fight off the back of that, massive disrespect from the side of Splyce that ends up getting punished.
I mean, when you land on Rekkles with Tristana, it's a big play.
Well, take a look at the damage now. Kobbe's going to push into that mid lane. He gets a couple autos, 3 items completed, QSS, as well as the Shiv and the rapid fire cannon. Hilly and Fnatic are defending at their inhibitor turrets. Down a lot of gold, and they need to find more team fights or buy more time. Fortunately, they have the Sivir wave clear for days to help them get to the stage where Kayle and Sivir can take over, but they need to protect their base. The tower has now fallen as Bwipo makes his way back to the mid lane. He gets caught by a decimating smash. The rupture as well. Box comes down. Now Vizicacsi's already sent into zombie form. Sion gets once again pulled backwards and will get farmed up yet again. The inhibitor is defended, but the tower did drop.
Once again, a little too much disrespect shown towards Fnatic. Good hook there from Hylissang combined with the chain CC from the rest of Fnatic meant that they were able to lock down the front line, and that means Splyce cannot continue the siege. Honestly, Splyce, considering how big of a lead they had, you can't help but start to get a little bit nervous for them now, even though they're so strong. 3 items on Ryze, 3.5, well, 4 arguably with the QSS completed for Kobbe. Like, they should be so strong. They should be so terrifying. But Fnatic, with this Kayle, now level 15, not sure if she got the elixir of skill, but regardless, very, very close to that point where she's going to do true damage and will be permanently exalted at all points, along with the Rekkles. 2, nearly 3 items done. Fnatic have that win condition in their back pocket where one good team fight can flip this game on its head.
And unfortunately, it was one bad team fight from Splyce that really put them in this position, because I agree with you, it was like full steam ahead. They were going to roll over Fnatic, start eating up all of this base, and now it almost feels like they've gotten into their heads a little bit, that they're almost giving too much respect at the wrong times, maybe a little bit too confident at the wrong times, and not picking their moments correctly. And that's the thing, this is still a very young squad. Even in their experienced members like Xerxe, they've got 3 members who are 19 years old. They want to get to that stadium, they want to get to Rotterdam, and this is a high-pressure situation.
We actually heard Norskeren saying that in the pre-match video, talking about he's never played on a stage that size and what it would mean for Norskeren to make it to Rotterdam.
And Duke talks about it all the time, their coach. You know, he says, yeah, the Splyce name has a long-standing history. We have Chachi and Kobbe, but this is a very young roster.
Yeah, it really, really is. Now, of course, this series is just heating up. I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow, G2 will be taking on Origin. Ready check starts at 4:30 Central European Summertime, with Game 1 starting at 5 p.m. Bring us back in. 26 minutes on the clock. It is a 6,500 gold lead to Splyce. They are playing a little bit more tempered, but they are still pushing Fnatic back to their inhibitor towers and deep inside their own territory.
I find it so funny that you say that we're only 26 minutes in. It feels like we're already in the late game QuickShot with all these huge item spikes being reached for so many players. I did get word in my ear, thank you production, that Nemesis did not get the elixir of skill. So one more level is really the break point that so many players at home fear. And team fighting against this level 16 Kayle with this item build, it's scary.
Okay,
Ding.
so you've got level 16. She now automatically gets her passive when she rocks up. Sivir also has 3 items complete. This is a very terrifying. For all of the lead that Splyce made themselves.
It's the Baron, here we go.
In a true 5v5, this could go either way.
All right, Baron is being burned down, and this is the vision perspective from Fnatic. Thank you, observers. Fnatic are walking in blind. Now they've got to be very, very careful. Baron continues to be burned down. Look at the minimap. Humanoid and Nemesis, they're going toe-to-toe. They're down in the bottom left. Baron is now being stopped. Splyce have peeled away. They've been interrupted. Humanoid runs away. Divine Judgment has been used. And the judgment is nobody will die just yet. Baron has started to reset. Humanoid and Nemesis, they're backing away.
And they're just trying to force up the TPs and now looking for a possible engage.
All right, there's a defensive flash from Bwipo. Death Sentence goes wide. Smash finds nobody. Vedius is Hilly is forced to put the box down defensively. Death Sentence comes back. Here's TP. Teleport starting to channel. Nemesis will be joining just a little bit late. Then Fish is going to Rekkles. Jumped over the wall. He's found Rekkles. He's still untouched. But take a look at Nemesis. He's trying to burn. He's got no ulti to use though. He's got one.
He's dead.
Two. But here comes Kobbe. Hopping, skipping, jumping. This will be the third kill of the fight. And he's looking to chase for more.
And Kobbe comes up huge. Triple kill for the AD carry of Splyce. He needed to be the carry for his team. And he does so by flashing in and assassinating Rekkles.
And that means that they can just devastate the base of Fnatic here. I'm curious how confident they're going to be if Broxah and Hilly can make sure that they don't push for the win, but they're at least going to get total Baron control here.
But so much props has to go for Humanoid for that fight to work out. Not only did he get the flash from Nemesis, but he got his ultimate as well. And we saw Nemesis in the middle of that fight. He was primed and ready to clean up, but because he didn't have those crucial skills available, they could lock him down, Kobbe could clean him up, and Splyce could come out on top.
And Kobbe, I believe he gets over on the side of the wall and immediately assassinates Rekkles here. It's huge damage to that backline.
You can see here, keep your eyes on Rekkles in this fight. Xerxe flashes in. He doesn't actually get hit by the Impale, but he does get CC'd. And Kobbe is like, okay, hit. The stun from Braum as well. That's more than enough to kill Rekkles. And unfortunately, Broxah then gets knocked away, so he can't threaten Kobbe anymore. And he's just sitting on the backline, cleaning everything up.
10, 1, and 0. Mr. Splyce, the franchise player, your all-pro bot laner. The strategy from Splyce from the get-go was get this man ahead. It was a lane swap to enable Tristana 30 minutes ago. A tower dive at level 2 for Skarner. That managed to work, and now Kobbe on this Trist has completely taken over the game. Super's in 2 lanes, Baron is still standing, and Fnatic are trying to push the wave out as fast as is possible.
And it just means that there are multiple ways now that Splyce can eat up this game and start to split up the map. They can try to play with their super creep waves, they can play their 1-3-1, you can see Humanoid still on the bottom of your screen, or they can try to go toe-to-toe for the 5v5. Fnatic do not have the same luxury. They are forced to look for the 5v5. They need to play around their Kayle.
And now you can see Bwipo, the one being in the bot lane. He has his TP up, so that risk of a steal is unavailable. Splyce, they need deeper vision if they really want to commit to this Baron, because right now, Fnatic still have easy access to the potential steal.
Okay, teleport's available for Bwipo. He's backed away from that bottom turret. You can see Humanoid pushing in. Nemesis forced to defend the supers in the top lane. Kobbe and Xerxe are trying to focus down Baron, but look, Broxah's waiting in the wings. Humanoid is now pushing onto Bwipo. Keep your eyes on the bottom left. Keep your eyes everywhere. There's action in every single lane.
They don't need to force the 50-50. I love this call from Splyce because meanwhile on the bot side, Humanoid is beating down Cho'Gath.
Oh, this is so difficult. Nemesis has left the top lane. Death Sentence finds no target. Blue team, Splyce! They secure Baron Nashor. They played that so calm and calculated. And they now extend that gold lead even further. 8,000 up.
Patient play from Splyce. I was a little concerned because of how much easy access Fnatic had towards the Baron, but Splyce recognized, okay, if we try to invade the enemy jungle, there's a risk we end up finding ourselves in another fight. So instead, we'll just use the super minions, we'll use Humanoid on a side lane to force Fnatic to split up, and then they can't possibly come and challenge us at this objective, resulting in a very clean and easy secure for Splyce.
Very nicely done by Splyce and Froskurinn. And I just call out something you mentioned earlier. When you look at Splyce and the fact they're playing against Fnatic, playing against a Kayle and a Sivir, those late game champions, the question I have is, will Fnatic win this game? The reason I ask that and I set it up is I'm going to ask the fans at home, will Fnatic come back? Will they be able to defend against double supers and Baron and Mountain? Vote in chat and we'll take a look at your votes later.
I mean, I think the important thing is that Fnatic recognize that they have no power over this map. Splyce's composition and how strong each of their individual pieces are mean that they can play multiple side lanes at the same time. But the fact of the matter is, eventually, Splyce will have to go through Fnatic in the base. So as long as Fnatic fight them in the base, they still need to be respected. But if they fight in the jungle, if they get split up, Splyce will just rip them apart.
I love the fact right now, Splyce playing on all 3 lanes. The super minions are walking in. You can see a lot of still faith in the Fnatic squad. Everyone knows what it's like to play against the Kayle. Everyone has been in this situation where they thought the game was won, and then Kayle just ends up turning it around. And now the pressure falls on Nemesis as Bwipo caught out.
Oh, so much damage. He's forced to run away with his life. The Fisher comes down, knocks Bwipo up, continues to be hammered on. Humanoid hasn't joined the fight, but the inhibitor turret has fallen. Rekkles is running, got flash available. Not going to use it just yet. Third inhibitor falls.
And it feels like Splyce have all of the tools to deal with this. This Braum is doing so much work against the damage that Rekkles wants to put out on Sivir, and they have things like Humanoid as well as the Impale from Skarner to deal with the Kayle, to CC lock her down. I love what Splyce have drafted here and how they've executed the entire game.
Here we go.
One last push.
Bwipo is stepping forward. Feral Scream has already been used. Bwipo is going to dash away. The Lantern actually pulls him to safety. I'm looking at Xerxe for the Impale. Take a look at the flame. That's a jump onto Humanoid. Now the damage onto Chachi. Buster Shot's going to buy so much time. Rekkles is very, very low. Nemesis is stepping forward, but it's Broxah down. Hilly down. Kobbe Rocket jumps forward. Rekkles stays just live, long enough to continue fighting. Final Judgment is available for Nemesis. He has used it onto Rekkles, but Kobbe doesn't care. He's got two. The ricochets flying across, and it's simply not enough for Rekkles. Nexus is now being focused. Nemesis is stepping forward. That's a triple kill. Picked up for Kobbe. The Quadra, the Nexus, and Splyce even a series.
The GGs come out from Splyce in what was overall a very good game. There was a brief moment where things looked a little suspicious, but ultimately Splyce were in control of this game from start to finish. The creative lane swap, the early kills, they were 7-0 at one point with full control over the map. And Splyce are bringing the game to Fnatic.
I know it is a little bit of a joke, but Fnatic 2 wins, 6 losses on red side across the 8 games that they have played. The pivots in draft and then the execution on that draft allows Splyce to pick up the win.
And again, it's kind of back to those mental games. You know, they went back to a 5v5, and even though Fnatic did get that one good team fight, Splyce showed how they can eat up the map, how they can also draft for the team fight, and how they can best Fnatic in this series. So I'm curious, do we see the teams run back the exact same thing, draft for scaling, draft for 2-item power spikes, and eventually have a 5v5 composition ahead of them, or are we going to continue to play around with these side lanes?
Yeah, ultimately, I think we're going to have to see something new from Fnatic, which is quite exciting because I feel like we've seen a lot of the same stuff. We've seen a lot of Karthus jungle. This was a very similar draft to what Fnatic ran against Vitality last week that got very heavily punished in the early game. Clearly, you cannot disrespect Splyce like this because they've come in prepared, but what's impressive to me is that Splyce is the first team to interrupt the winning streak from Fnatic in the second half of the split. They lost to SK, they went on a 12-game winning streak, and now Splyce has been the team to ruin it.
Thank you very much, Vedius. 100% right. 12-0 to now 12-1. And to break down exactly how Splyce took down Fnatic, here's Shocks and crew.
Thank you very much, guys. Splyce was not fazed at all by that loss in Game 1 or the 12-game winning streak from Fnatic. They come right back, look at Nemesis' Kayle in the eyes, and beat Fnatic. We have a tie in the series, and I have to say, this was such a cool game to watch. From strategy, from draft to late-game team fighting, it had it all. So let's start at the beginning. Can you guys walk me through what was so beautiful about the plan that Splyce pulled off from draft to level 1? I don't know who's more excited.
I'm more excited.
Okay.
Get out of here, Deficio. Ultimately, the lane swap was where it all kicked off for me because it was very clear that Splyce came in with a strategy. And the main point to bring up here is Tristana Braum at level 1.
Yes, and we are starting this pause just for the entire setup because there's more champions we need to talk about for this to be so effective. So you mentioned Tristana Braum, obviously great for like a potential all-in surprise.
You can take Tristana W level 1 like we saw here.
Exactly. Then they also have Sion, and I think this is really, really crucial when you're going for this lane swap because we have to remember, Fnatic, they don't expect this. They're not ready for a lane swap. No one lane swaps right now. That's like crazy, you know? So they're not sitting here and saying, oh, we know exactly what's going to happen. But Sion is like the best tank at not actually getting killed under a tower dive because of his passive as well.
Yeah, and he took Glacial Augment as well, so it's very hard. Now, as we roll this clip, we see the ingenuity behind the Splyce play because Bwipo doesn't expect this. Certainly, Kobbe immediately W's onto him. They get the slowdown and threaten the concussive blow stun. Now, Bwipo has to respond with a flash of his own, but what that means is you're going to be having a Cho'Gath in the top lane, EXP denied, farming under his tower, so Xerxe pass immediately up towards the top side to pull off the dive.
And I love the fact that now, obviously, with Bwipo being an easy target, the entire goal for Splyce with this lane swap is to get Kobbe to a point where he actually gets kill threat in a 2v2. And that's the BF sword he's looking for. So the entire goal is to give Kobbe the kill.
And the first blood here is so important, especially on Kobbe, as you said, because while this is going on, notice it's not a dive in the bottom side for Fnatic. They're just getting turret plates.
This is a Sion, man.
I believe Rekkles got 3 plates himself, so the gold was relatively even, but the first blood put Tristana to about 200 gold more, which was the item difference on the first base.
And Splyce did not stay top to try and kill the turret, because that was never the goal. The goal was to get that early lead for Tristana, specifically just Tristana, not the team. Swap back to bot side, and then we started seeing some fighting around bot lane. You know, we had Xerxe show up, Broxah tried, but he ends up also going down and giving a bunch of kills over to Kobbe, who just got really far ahead of a super cool start. Because even if you did kill Sion bot lane, his passive just kills the minion wave, or maybe gets a kill back, even at Glacial Augment.
And I think this is what we talk about when often people will say, oh, they're talking about Splyce's preparation again. But I do think they have shown some really interesting kind of strategies, also picks, also last week. They're not afraid to try these things. And I think this is really nice for them because it really works out. It shows them you have this early game plan against a team like Fnatic, who's usually very good in the early game, and you just completely set up your AD carry for success. And the beauty is that it works out perfectly.
Yeah, and I've got news for you. We're going to see something completely different from them in Game 3. Maybe not in terms of overall composition, but it's not going to be that same level 1. They have done the preparation, they have done their homework, and they have multiple different ideas here to try and pull off the win against Fnatic.
This is also what I really love about prepping, you know, for just one team, is that everyone can sit at home and theory craft all these different kind of strategies that people don't expect, you know? We've seen a couple of lane swaps during the year, but they've always been different in how they're being pulled off. What's the next? 5-man level 1 ganking mid or something? Like, these things can happen when other teams are not ready, and that's the joy of watching a best of 5, where teams have that full week for this one specific match.
I agree, and we talk up what happened in the early stages of that game a lot because it was very influential. However, there were some moments where all of a sudden these team fights almost get turned on their head because of Kayle. Now, I want to ask you guys, how much of that had to do with Kayle being so strong at level 16, and how much of it was also just Fnatic able to fight back in that situation, especially Bwipo?
Yeah, I think a lot has to do with the Kayle, but Bwipo in this fight, importantly, plays it so well. He's the primary initiation target here for Splyce, but look at this. Gets the Kayle ult, and while it doesn't do much damage, he silenced flash fears on towards Kobbe, and then as he goes down, chucks out the rupture that interrupts the jump from Kobbe. I mean, he absolutely went full beast mode in that team fight, and while Nemesis is picking up all the kills, it was Bwipo that did all the work.
Absolutely love it. And the reason we show this replay is because right after replay said, GG, Fnatic won. Just because Kayle managed to get the kills. And it actually looked like Fnatic did slow down the game a bit after losing all the early turrets, after Kobbe was like 7-0 with like over 10,000 gold early. It looked like it was never going to actually work for Fnatic, but with that one fight, they bought themselves a lot of time.
And then we get to the next team fight, and I think this is where you really think, you know what, if Fnatic pull this off correctly, they actually win that fight. But what do they do wrong, or what does Splyce do well here?
Well, it's Nemesis at the start, because look at where he's teleporting in. He has no ultimate because he just lost it 1v1ing Humanoid in the side lane. So he comes into the fight. Meanwhile, his AD carry gets sniped out by Kobbe when he could have teleported to the tunnel down in the bottom right corner of the screen. He absolutely could have put himself in a better position here to impact the fight instead of going into melee range of 5 people.
So I want to zoom away and not talk about the micro part of where did he TP, and more just say Fnatic ended up taking a fight without Kayle being there.
Yeah.
They were actually an okay spot to just keep kind of hovering around jungle, but they obviously saw the opportunity with the hook and say like, okay, maybe we can get some damage here, potential fight. Splyce instantly realized, great call from them. Hang on, our really strong member is Kobbe. He's right here. Their really strong member that we have to respect is the Kayle. She's not. It will take 4.5 seconds or like forever for her to get into the fight. So I really love the Splyce to say, this is our fight. Instantly jump it. Win the fight without Kayle being there. Take 2 inhibs. And now it doesn't matter that your late game is not going to be as strong because now you have super minion pressure and you can pressure Baron right after because of it.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, we talk a lot about Kobbe, and I think Kobbe versus Rekkles was a matchup we're very excited to see in these possibly 5 games, which I think it's going that way.
Could happen.
I would say round 1, game 1, over to Rekkles with the Sivir against the Zoe. Round 2, though, game 2. Kobbe Kobbe has showed up to play.
Kobbe popped off, and of course there was a lot of setup to put him ahead, but if you look at how he played these late game team fights, he used the range for Tristana beautifully, assassinating Rekkles in the fight we just watched, but also in the last team fight, you notice he got his ultimate off. It knocked away both Rekkles and Nemesis on the Nexus. I've never seen a Tristana ult that good. He was actually flanking on the champion and solo won that fight.
Yeah, he just seems to have the confidence. He said it, I want to take Splyce to this LEC title. That's what I have to do for the fans, and he is trying. Now, as we look ahead to Game 3, I just want to repose the question. I asked at the end of the first segment, I said, if you're Splyce, do you now abandon ship for any inventive picks and go for full late game team fighting comp where you enable Kobbe? Yes, that's what they did. But they had to get a lot right to make this happen. They had to get him on a Tristana or on a similar pick. They had to have the Sion, who is really good when you know you're going to pull off the lane swap. The lane swap has to work out. Fnatic doesn't have to do anything against it. How many times do you think they can replicate this scenario? And do they have to?
So I don't think you can replicate the scenario with the lane swap. I think Fnatic coach will be behind the scenes trying to figure out how to counteract this. What I do want them to maintain is the composition, because I think they had so many fantastic tools, right? You had Kobbe on something that could carry in the late game, that outranged the backline of Fnatic, and then you had lanes that Xerxe could play around. They were just roaming with Xerxe and Vizicsacsi the entire game, looking for fights around Kobbe. They identified who could carry, and that is what they are going to be able to succeed with.
Yeah, I think for Splyce, you can keep going for these drafts where you are getting outscaled, but you've actually shown twice now you can get early leads. This one obviously was executed a lot better. It was less reliant on like long range, fancy poke, and never getting into a fight because you actually had some sort of a team fight setup with a Tristana. I think even without a lane swap, they could have gone with this draft, focused the bot lane early with Sivir, with Tristana Braum, and gotten some sort of advantage. Probably not as big as 3-0 Tristana almost instantly, but they could have started snowballing this game as well. I think Fnatic, it's more on them maybe to say, listen, Kayle, super strong late game. Did we have enough to maybe stop the enemy team from snowballing too fast? They tried to have Rek'Sai for early game to kind of try and like give them some chance to get to late. Maybe that's where they feel like there needs to be a small change, not a Cho'Gath top lane or maybe not a Sivir bot. But honestly, I think this game, great strategy from Splyce. Fantastic fun to watch. And I think if Splyce are not feeling super confident now in their ability to snowball, well, then they're making a mistake. Go
they
for snowball.
They should go all in for it. That is the beauty of a best of 5. After game 1, you say, you've shown everything. What are you going to do now? Well, we're going to slap you around with the composition that we are used to playing and we are so good at. This is shaping up to be an incredibly interesting best of 5. And, of course, a spot in the semi-final in Rotterdam is on the line. Fnatic and Splyce are tied after